you want to stop letting your days slip away and start leading your life with intention and purpose to pursue your full potential, then you're in the right place, my friend. Welcome to the Claim Your Day podcast. I'm your host, Nick Mazie. Here, we stop just managing our demanding lives and begin to actively pursue our best lives, rooted in our values and purpose. Each week, we'll discuss practical strategies focused on becoming intentional with all that we do so we can live and lead well. Together, let's make today count. Hello, my friend, and welcome. Welcome to episode 72 of the Claim Your Day podcast. Glad you're here and joining in. This episode is actually the last in a short series all about an intentional reset. Restarting in a way that allows us to be focused, on track, and begin to make progress. So if you missed any of the previous episodes, no worries. You can go back and listen to them wherever you're listening to this episode. And all the major podcast providers have that. But I would encourage you to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Why that's important is because this format for this podcast is most of the time I'm doing short series. This one is just a 4-part series. There's 3 before, and then today's the last episode in it. And so when you're listening to a series, I'm not trying to create an hour and a half podcast. So what I do is I break it down into small, manageable, bite-sized chunks where each episode's somewhere between like 10 and 20 minutes, normally about 15. And you can get the information and get on your way. Well, just a quick recap so far for this intentional reset series is we looked at identity, and really becoming the architect of our lives, being intentional with what we want and how we're going to get there. In the second episode, we looked at prioritizing, and really making sure that we're not just choosing the good and ignoring the great, but we're really prioritizing the most impactful things we can do in our lives. Using a little bit of that 80-20 rule. The third episode, we looked at presence, really being present where we're at. That's, be where your feet are at. And that way we can actually make the most impact. But this is also a great way to eliminate some of that work-life balance because you're really being effective where you are in each one of those situations. And then today we're going to dive into really how we can build these habits in a way that actually stick by using a little 2-minute solution and bridging that gap between the intention and the action. So look, if you're tired of failing at your goals, setting a goal in January, and by the time February happens, you've already scrapped it. And then this episode's for you. We're in the finale of the Intentional Reset series. We're going to be diving into just a simple 2-minute solution. It's really just a tactical approach to build consistency. Consistency is what's going to take you where you want to go. It all comes down to what we do on a daily, regular basis, and it's going to allow us to break out of this spiral shame. Sometimes that can happen when we set these goals that are really important to us. They're massive, they're important, they're valuable. We want them so bad. They're truly a priority, but for some reason we missed the mark, and then we beat ourselves up because it was so important and we flopped. Look, if that's ever happened to you, you're not alone. But sometimes what we're doing is we're making it way too difficult on ourselves. Achieving big goals, making massive movements, shifting things in our lives to really be going in the direction that we want. Sometimes it's a ton of work. Sometimes it's really important, but we don't need to make it harder on ourselves. So this episode, it's going to be really simple. Like most episodes, it's simple. It's just doing it that really makes the biggest difference. Look, and if you set these big goals and you want to make these massive changes in your life, then pretty much what that comes down to is that you're trying to go from 0 to 100 too quick. John Maxwell talks about this a lot, and it falls under his law of the process. And that's basically all it's saying is that you have to go through the process. You have to go through the process of becoming the person that you want to be. You have to go through the process of becoming a person that exercises on a regular basis if you haven't been that person. You have to go through the process of becoming the person that saves their money if you've been in an area where you haven't. You have to become in the process of someone that prioritizes their health or prioritizes family. Whatever it is, you're going in that direction, but you got to go through the process of becoming that. And it's not this instantaneous change where we're at 0 one day and we're at 100 the next. It's like if you want to start exercising and you don't do any exercise at all, exercising for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, probably is not going to be the best next step. You got to go through the process of doing it. So how do you get there? That's where we're talking about this really simple 2-minute solution And it's this really simple 2-minute rule that can be the solution to help you to make that progress and become that person that you want to be and really to claim your day and make it what you want. And this is basically just establishing a habit first and then improve it. See, a habit must be established first. You know, there's an old saying, you can't steer a parked car. Well, until you're in movement, you really can't guide yourself to go where you want it to go. So a simple thing might, if you're not really reading a whole lot right now and you want to develop a reading habit, then instead of reading 30 minutes a night every single night, maybe you're just going to start with, hey, I'm going to read one page. Look, before you laugh, I know one page is really small, but what you're doing is you're setting a habit that's so easy you can do it no matter what. And then what happens is you do it no matter what. And then you've built into your mind that you're just the type of person that reads. And then before you know it, all you're doing is really expanding on that just a little bit. You know, if you want to clean your whole house, you want to clean the whole house. Well, do you clean and organize your whole entire house, and that's how you're going to develop the habit of keeping a clean house? And it's this all or nothing kind of thinking? Or do you start with one small area, one junk drawer, and address that, and then do those things on a regular basis? Because if you do that, if you start real small, in the 2-minute rule, all of that is saying is just knock out something that you can do in 2 minutes. But you knock out one thing that you can do in 2 minutes, and then you can easily develop the habit of doing it. And from there, you can expand and grow. I said this is simple. We've talked about it before. But if you're going to do this reset, if you're going to really kind of think about where you're at, I said go through the previous episodes, and make this plan, then when it comes down time for the implementation, when it comes down time for the action piece of it, make sure you're setting those steps so small that it's just almost mindless. It's just, of course, I'm going to knock it out. It's not a problem at all. That makes it so that you don't have to take this large leap to start off with, but instead you can take this small step. And that truly is what's going to make the difference. It lowers that barrier so that you can be able to move forward. And once you're moving forward, then you can develop momentum. Now, momentum is really where it's at. And so they have this thing, it's called the Big Mo. Big Mo, you may have heard of the Big Mo. A lot of people have talked about it. Darren Hardy talks about the Big Mo a lot, so we'll give him credit, even though I've heard it elsewhere as well. But so the Big Mo is basically just saying that the hardest part is getting started. But once you're in motion, it's actually pretty easy to stay in motion. So now think about the Big Mo and then go back to the previous point that we had about that 2-minute rule. Well, if you're only going to do 2 minutes of cleaning, of exercise, of reading, that is pretty easy. You can knock that out. It's a pretty low barrier, tiny step. But what happens is after you take that one step, then you can very easily the next day take the next step and the next step. Before you know it, the momentum might be slow, but you've developed some momentum. And now, my friend, you're moving forward. Now, before you discredit how small of reading one page a day really is, remember that, first of all, you can increase that as you get used to the habit and you develop the habit around that behavior. But also, a little bit of improvement daily actually turns out into a huge amount of improvement over time. This is how that works. 1% improvement. 1% improvement daily, you get just 1% better. Well, that compounds and that compounds and that compounds. Before you know it, you're 37 times greater in whatever that area is that you only made improvements in at 1% over the year. That's how we want to increase, is slowly, consistently, methodically, because those are the habits that we really, truly can build our lives around. Okay, like I said, guys, I know that this is simple. But if you think about where you're at right now, an area of life that you are stuck at, that you really want to make some improvements in. Now think about that area. What would it be like if you were able to consistently, regularly, day in and day out, make small gains and improvements in, to the point where you got so comfortable with the habit of improvement in that area that you began to take bigger and bigger steps, and you maintained them on a consistent basis. That's how you're going to reclaim your day. It's not just about that one small habit. It's about claiming your day so that you can guide it to go in the direction where you want it to go. Think about this. You can start with just 2 minutes a day, and you can ultimately prove to yourself that you are in charge of where you're guiding your life to go. You can make improvements in the areas that you want by, first of all, accepting that there's going to be a process. Acknowledge that, commit to it. Don't let that get you down. That process is going to guide you to the life that you want and making the most of your days. Because in that process, you're going to be consistent. You're going to use that 2-minute rule and just to say whatever that smallest next step is that you can take, keep it under 2 minutes. And that right there is going to make it so it's doable, it's relatively easy. And then before you know it, you're going to do it consistently day in and day out, and that's going to give you the momentum to keep going forward. After you have that momentum, then you might be able to take some a little bit larger steps. But this is one thing I do a whole lot when I'm exercising. I get training for my Spartan races because I can't really go to the gym all the time, or I can't do long gym sessions all the time. Or some of my runs, they're going to take me 2 hours, where I've built up at the very end of my training cycle for some of these longer ones that I was doing. Obstacle course races I was doing. I did some longer ones, and I'd have to run for 13 miles. Well, that would take me a while, and I do some exercises on those runs. A lot of my training for it, let me be honest, I stuck to 10-minute or 10-mile runs, even though the event was 13 to 14. All right, I'm getting off track. My apologies. But in my training, I really couldn't do that all the time. I got a family, I got work, I got demands. But what I could do is I could get to the gym for 15 minutes, and that was my small step. I might only work out for a few minutes, but if I stayed consistent on it, the payback was huge, and the reward was everything that I needed it to be, because I maintained the consistency, even if the size of my steps couldn't be huge all the time. And that's what I want for you. I want you to develop this momentum so you can be consistent. Use your 2-minute rule to make sure that you are taking steps. It doesn't have to be a large leap. You're going to take that small step, and acknowledge the law of the process, because that's what that consistency is going to let you to achieve your goals and live that life you want to live. Well, that's it for today's episode, my friend. Thank you for listening. Get out there, do your intentional reset, because this is your life. I want you to claim your day and make your life what you want it to be. Living your best life according to your values, what's most important to you, your life, your family, and just make it the best that it can be, because it's worth it, my friend. All right, thank you for listening. Take care, and can't wait to talk to you again in the next episode.